Good afternoon. In the afternoon of Shabbos, we recite Kiddush again upon returning home. And this Kiddush has a unique name referred to as Kiddusha Rabba, the Great Kiddush. And Gemara in Pesachim on Daf Kuf states that even though the primary Kiddush is certainly the one which takes place at night, there is also an obligation of Kiddush during the day. And as long as one made Kiddush at night, the consensus seems to be that the daytime Kiddush is only rabbinic in nature, but nonetheless, clearly one has an obligation. The Gemara concludes that the text of the bracha is solely Borei Peri Hagafen, the bracha over a cup of wine. And the Rabba and Shulchan Aruch rule this way as well. Now, in terms of the full text that many have the practice to say, there are different minhagim, whether we just recite Borei Peri Hagafen, we just recite the pasuk of Al Kain, or we include the paragraphs of Vishamru or Zach, or even going as far as the longer paragraphs of Im Tashiv, that everyone has their practice that they've adopted, and they are legitimate. But the main thing to keep in mind is that the primary obligation is the bracha itself of Borei Peri Hagafen. Now, why does this Kiddush have a special name different than all other Kiddushim? What about at night? What about at Yom Tif? Why do we say specifically Shabbos day is called Kiddusha Rabba? So there's opposing approaches to this matter in the Rishonim. Rashi, Rabbeinu Tam explain that because the primary aspect of each Kiddush begins with the bracha of Borei Peri Hagafen. That at night, for example, we say the paragraph Yom HaShishi Vayechulu, but the Iker Kiddush, the formal obligation, is the bracha of Kiddush, which is preceded by the Borei Peri Hagafen. And since every Kiddush begins with the bracha Borei Peri Hagafen, it is Kiddusha Rabba today on Shabbos day when we say solely the bracha of Borei Peri Hagafen. So that's Kiddusha Rabba. That is the great Kiddush because that's what starts all times that we say Kiddush. The Ran, on the other hand, interprets it entirely the opposite approach, and he says it's not building up how great this Kiddush is of Kiddusha Rabba, but rather it's used as a euphemism that Chazal didn't want to, so to speak, insult the level of Kiddush and say, oh, you're only derabbanan compared to last night's Kiddush, which was deoraisa. And therefore, even though this is, strictly speaking, from a halachic perspective, on a lower obligation, to build it up, Chazal termed it as Kiddusha Rabba. So opposing approaches in that. Now, what about eating before Kiddush during the day? So the Shulchan Aruch says, just like it's usher to eat at night before Kiddush, so too during the day. However, if one wants to drink water, for example, before davening, then he says it would be allowed because the chiyuv, the obligation to recite this Kiddush during the day, has not yet kicked in and doesn't kick in until one makes Kiddush. Accordingly, the halachas of what one may have prior to of davening, so whether one may have coffee or the like, would be the same as any other day of eating before Shachris, as long as one has not begun to daven. It would, the obligation of Kiddush has not yet kicked in, although, of course, one would have to be conscious about eating or drinking during davening and to explore those halachos there. Have a fantastic day.